So I want to share a real life probate story that really illustrates why I have such concerns about what's happening out there in the financial market and what's happening to victims of exploitation and abuse, what's happening to elders out there, and it's occurring in real time. The numbers are exploding. So here's the deal. In all these videos, I've talked about financial exploitation and abuse of the elderly. There's a massive problem with it out there because there's trillions of dollars that our parents, grandparents, friends have locked up in the financial markets. And people would be blown away if they understood how vulnerable these accounts are to exploitation and abuse. And I'm going to illustrate that with a real world example. So, some time ago, a person comes into the office with a run-of-the-mill probate deal. They had a decent relationship with the person that died, and they'd kind of gotten this piece of mail out of the blue, and they knew that they were entitled to something. Like most of these relationships, the beneficiary here had a decent relationship with the deceased, somewhat close, but it didn't get into the realm of detail, granular detail about the financial circumstances of the deceased. One of the characteristics, particularly this elder generation, is they tend to be pretty private. They're not the flashy, glamorous TikTok internet set that's out there broadcasting and blabbing about their wealth. But the beneficiary, again, knew that the deceased had some wealth, some accounts. And so when the letter came from a good attorney and it said, hey, you're entitled to X, the person thought about it and decided, before I sign this, go talk to Widener. So it comes in, and again, it's got this paper. It's pretty simple stuff, and I look at it, and it would have been really easy to just say, yeah, sign that deal, and we're kind of done. But in 25 plus years of doing this, there's certain things that I've learned, and a key one is slow down. You can only be a good lawyer if you've learned to slow down, if you've learned to thoughtfully consider, if you've learned to allow questions, facts, and circumstances to bubble up in your brain, in your heart, in your body for a good long time. And this is one of those cases where after talking with the individual, I printed up the paper, and kind of the kiss of death, if you will, is when I print something up now. We lawyers live almost always in a digital realm. Everything's PDF and everyone's sitting there. But from time to time, you print something up, right? So I printed this stuff up, and that allows it to sit over there on the desk and bubble and stew and bubble a little bit there, right? Marinate. And, when you're in the middle of one phone call and you're kind of dreaming away or whatever, you grab these pieces of paper and you kind of flip through it, you look at it and you read it, you hold the paper, physical connection between your fingers and your eyes and your nose and your ears and everything that's going on, and you can kind of put it down. And this one sat there for a somewhat extended period of time, and then, as this often happens, late at night, boom, I wake up, literally from a dead sleep. And I can usually go back to sleep after that, but it tells me something that's simmering was there. So I get in the office first thing, and I start probing into what was going to be a really simple deal, right? Now my eyes are there. And one of those moments, I've experienced it lots in my career, where boom, now you start tingling all over. And that's when the clicks really start happening. You kind of have started somewhere, and now I start looking. And lo and behold, what had happened was the deceased, who had a significant amount of money. And that's the real key thing right here. So again, my beneficiary thought the number was X. and that was largely consistent with what the beneficiary thought was coming the way, right? But it turns out that the deceased did not have X, this decent sum of money. The decedent had X plus 4, a dramatically extensive amount of money. And that just wasn't known to this beneficiary, nor the other ones for that matter. And what had happened, and again, this happens more and more, increasing frequency, is the deceased led an incredible life of quiet reflection and had been successful, done the deal. And another factor, and this is really common too, the deceased did not act alone. In many of these cases, particularly the conflicted probate stuff or the ones that are big, this is family money, right? So the individual had taken family money and had kind of parked it and had been playing with it very successfully. Successfully in a way that wasn't known to anybody else. Because again, quiet individual, extraordinarily smart, very sophisticated, and had contacts and communications and things that no one else in this beneficiary class was aware of. And what started with this, sign the piece of paper, get this little bit right here, but fantastically, the one beneficiary who I know very well just said, you know what, let me have Widener look at it. And so God bless the individual for doing that, because that opened up this massive, I'll call it opportunity, but problem, scandal, big deal. Because again, deceased over here, started with a good bit of family money here, had been very calm, very cool, very collected, very sophisticated, and taking that money from here, boom, to here. Now, here's where the problem comes. If the deceased had full faculties and knew that he was dying and could make plans to apportion this stuff out according to his wishes, all would be well. Not a big deal. But what happened was, and again, this is what we're seeing more and more, is a caregiver had slipped in. And, family members were generally aware of the caregiver situation, but respected the privacy and respected, whatever was going on over there, out of state or whatever else like that. And so they didn't have tight contact with the deceased. But what had happened was, in a course of years, the caregiver learned that the deceased was really private, right? And easy enough to find out. Not getting calls at Christmas time, not getting calls at birthday, that sort of thing. Then you're talking to the deceased, and the deceased isn't reflecting, deep communication or contact with anybody else out here. You learn, the caregiver, that the deceased really doesn't have any good fiduciary, doesn't have a good attorney, accountant, close family member, anything else like that. So the deceased is able to get in here, the caregiver is able to get in here and start kind of pulling the levers on the individual's financial accounts. And I'm going to do a follow-up video here to get more detail about this issue, this problem, because this is the second sort of big explosion about this. But as the deceased's capacity starts to shift, fade, gets a little bit foggy, the caregiver is able to get in there and start making moves, making changes on the accounts. And it really blows your mind when you realize how easy this is. But, this wasn't the place, but let's say T. Rowe Price. So the individual, and these elder people, this is what it usually is. They're used to getting paper statements. But the caregiver comes in and clicks that box on we'll call it T. Rowe Price account, and T. Rowe Price account then stops sending paper statements. Paper trail goes cold. Boom. They take all those old paper statements and dump them. But now it's an electronic statement that's coming in, and that's all it is. Just email. Boom, boom, boom. And this is where the elements really begin to stack up. Shortly thereafter, the caregiver is able to then change the beneficiary designation on there from the bigger pot to a side pot over here with everything going to just this deal. Caregiver. the caregiver was able to go in and get multiples of these accounts and push it over into that direction. And were it not for just how dramatic this was, i.e. pushing the vast majority of the accounts over here, this probably would not have been revealed because, again, we'll get into this detail in the second bit of this. When you click over and have beneficiary designation changes over here and then address changes over here, none of these other people in the deceased life in the beneficiary class are going to be aware of this. It just poof, disappears. But in fact, that's what happened. Caregiver goes in, assets move over here. These people aren't even aware of it. Peeling back the onions on this thing, it becomes extraordinarily blunt about what's happened. I mean, we're talking full capacity diminishment on the deceased side, lost entirely. And that explains why the contact with the beneficiary class had really started to diminish. Again, capacity is diminishing, contact communication diminishing, becomes entirely reliant upon caregiver. And these people don't understand. They need to go in there and do some welfare checks and really figure out what's going on here. And then all the money flows over to the caregiver. I'm pleased that we were able to, in real short order, unwind this situation and then take that really significant now asset pool and have it split the way it should have. But the lesson is this. It almost didn't happen. Were it not for one of the beneficiaries going, let's just have somebody take a look at this, let's have him put eyeballs on this, it would have been the perfect, I'm not going to use that word, but it would have been bad because it would have been really easy for the caregiver over here to just spirit away all of that stuff. So I'm going to drop in a toolbox here for you to tell you what you can do to protect yourself from exactly what I've just described right there. When I say protect yourself, big quotes, I'm talking about if you're the king, the queen of the castle that's in control of this pot. I'm talking about if you're in the beneficiary class down here and you're aware of it, you're still wanting to respect the king or the queen and their pot, but they need to be aware of these vulnerabilities that exist that, frankly, even the king and queen right now aren't really aware of because of these new vulnerabilities that enter the system. One of the things that we've done here in this office, I've become licensed on a piece of software that's really earth-shattering, that's really a change entirely in the way probate is practiced because it gives access to all of these accounts here in a way that we've never had before. In a short period of time, processing a probate without doing that, this search of all the assets, search of retirement accounts, search of insurance policies, search of brokerage accounts, search of bank accounts, search of unclaimed funds. In short order, if you're not doing that as a probate practitioner, it's going to be malpractice because there's going to be accounts out here that are lost and hidden that you weren't able to find because it wasn't perfectly or correctly identified. So that case study, again, really important. And I want you to subscribe to this toolbox if you've got elder parents, if you've got whatever else that will explain to you what you need to do in order to prevent that scenario I described from happening.